Welcome to the show. This week we continue our focus on agriculture in Africa. We bring you a panel session from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. It was held at the African Green Revolution Forum. We also get your views on the issues, and we have Africa's top 10. You're watching the Africa Leadership Dialogues. I'm Julie Gichuru. Africa Leadership Dialogues comes to you from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia this week, where we focus on matters of agriculture with an incredible panel. With us, Ben Valk, the Global Head of Multilateral Development Banks and Government Relations for Rabobank International, a global leader in food and agriculture financing. Yassin Fall, Senior Economic Advisor for Africa at UN Women. Rob Smith, Senior Vice President of AGCO, a corporation based in the United States. Catherin Bertini, Co-Chair of the Global Agriculture Development Initiative. And Dr. Wanjiru Rutenberg, Director at African Women in Agricultural Research and Development Award. Let's get straight to their views on agriculture in Africa.
It has not made sense to me that as a continent, we continue to deny ourselves the talent and the brilliance of women who comprise 50% of our population. Why is it that we are okay to leave 50% of our potential leaders, innovators, women who may hold the solutions to some of the biggest challenges facing this continent? Why is it that we are okay through systems that leave women outside of decision-making tables, outside of the room? Why are we okay to not access for ourselves as a continent the tremendous resource that these women represent? The youth bulge in Africa. We have an opportunity as a continent. We can either see the increased numbers of young people on this continent as a threat, as a destabilizing force, or we can look over to Europe, look over to Japan, and watch the way they look at our population, our young population, with envy as their own population ages. We have tremendous power with a labor force that is coming up, including young people and setting policies and having young people at the table when we have these conversations is going to be absolutely critical to whether young people in Africa are a threat or an opportunity. I firmly believe that those of us in this room, are the generation that is charged with bringing about Africa's prosperity. Our fathers, our mothers brought independence. It is on us who are alive 50 years from that independence to secure Africa's prosperity. We are the ones we have been waiting for. But even as we work towards a prosperous Africa, we have a tough set of urgent questions to answer first. Prosperity for whom? Is it going to be prosperity for a select few who will not be able to sleep peacefully at night? Or will all of Africa rise? Thank you.
Yassin, I come straight to you. Knowing that women are such a critical factor in the growth and development of agriculture on this continent, what are your thoughts on this subject in relation to the role of women?
When we talk about value chain, we really need to look at several factors when it comes to supporting women smallholder farmers. First of all, we need to learn from the example and say that we need to support women organizing as farmers to represent a productive force so that they can have a bargaining capacity a bargaining capacity to access land, because we understand that small lots of land will not enable women to produce in quantity that enable them to access the market. So when we talk about agriculture that should be accelerated, agriculture that should enable inclusive development, meaning beneficial to all, especially those that are marginalized, we need to start by looking at the inputs for production that enable producers to be to be able to supply to the market need to be there. So that should be a first top priority. The second priority is, it is critical when we talk about smallholder farmers and women that we recognize indigenous knowledge. Indigenous knowledge of women in Africa that have been producing, saving, storing seeds. This is critical. We cannot develop this continent without recognizing that the food we produce in this continent is what is going to care us, what is going to take care of people. This is also a matter of democracy and sovereignty. So I think that the African women, and I'm speaking as a UN woman, but also I'm speaking as an African woman, this is something that women have been raising, that it is important that farming system research recognize, support, and enhance women's knowledge that has been recognized throughout history. Market principles of laissez-faire approach and basic competition require that all actors are on the same level of access to information, that they are able to make informed choices, that they have perfect mobility in all markets, goods and services, labor market, financial market. This is not the case for all in agriculture. If you want to be inclusive, we need to recognize that there is need for playing field. We need to put women, smallholder farmers in certain level before, in order to recognize that they can be actors that can benefit from accelerated agriculture. If we do not have subsidies that are supporting farmers, especially women farmers, women will be left behind, smallholder farmers will be left behind, and large commercial farmers, and that is not inclusive. That is not what I think the Africa we want. We want an Africa that look at poverty and uplift people who are living, who are marginalized, and who have been producing the food that this continent consumes. Thank you very much.
Let me come to you, Ben, and the question of investing. Inclusivity and access to finance. It's a real challenge. What are your thoughts on this area?
Access to finance is a prerequisite for developing successful and rewarding agricultural supply chains that produce food for the people of African countries, but that also provide wealth to families, development opportunities for communities, and pay a significant contribution to national GDP. Rabobank, in its origin, is a cooperative bank, a bank of farmers, credit cooperatives, founded in the late 1800s in the Netherlands. And this bank has focused since in its early decades primarily on extending credit to farmers. Some of you may know about Dutch and Western European agriculture, which is in a highly advanced and technical state right now. But over a century ago, the situation of farmers was basically very similar to the situation of many farmers in Africa. These people did not have access to credits, did not have access to production resources that they needed, seeds, fertilizer, irrigation equipment or other equipment. Most of the land was hand-worked, as we see in many countries today. And the cooperative system has a capability to provide enough trust to those funding the finance and can extend credits to farmers and other actors in agricultural supply chains. Now, banks and other financial institutions today have a role and a responsibility in society. They are not just there to make profits, they have to make profits. The business of financing in itself has to be rewarding, as has to be the agricultural production and processing and marketing. All the actors in supply chains, including financiers, must be able to retrieve a sufficient reward from their involvement. But banks have a role and a facilitating and enabling capability towards agricultural supply chains that can unlock growth and grow prosperity. When it comes to inclusion, in my view, the key responsibility for banks and other financial institutions, including microfinance institutions, non-bank financial institutions, SACCOs, etc., all these financiers have the responsibility to provide access to finance on equal terms to all who can apply for that finance. It's not always easy, to be very honest, to realize whether there's a bias in our decisions, for instance, as financiers. Obviously, our credit policies should provide equal access to finance to all eligible according to the law for that finance. But even then, banks have to be critical to themselves on their practice. Sometimes, of course, bias in our credit decisions is subjective and is not always only related to the formal policies. So banks have to be critical. Their responsibility in society is to provide access to finance. When that is done, there is great potential in agricultural supply chains in Africa.
I come to you next, Catherin, and the fact that we have so much potential it's a wonderful thing, but it's incredibly depressing when you look at the poverty statistics in Africa. So my question is, when it comes to the growth and development of agriculture and inclusive agriculture at that, where have we gone wrong and what do we need to do? Thank you.
We haven't paid enough attention, given enough support to, provided enough education for half of the population. And were we to do that, we could significantly decrease poverty and increase production. The statistics that probably everybody here has seen that come from FAO or IFPRI will tell us that, for instance, if women have the same inputs as men, women farmers have the same inputs as male farmers, that they'll increase their production 20 to 30%. We've seen statistics about girls in school and the fact that still girls are less likely to go to school than boys. And also we know from IFPRI that farmers who are educated are more productive than uneducated farmers. So we also know from them that women farmers are more likely to follow other women farmers. So if we're trying to increase production and knowing that most of the produce or the production in Africa comes via the hands of women, then why does it not make more sense to invest in basic education so that the people who are doing most of the farming understand how to read so they can read the back of a package of fertilizer or seeds, understand how to count so that they know how to count the rows of maize, understand how basically to facilitate their improvements in their own small business. And if we think about the fact that women are not only the farmers, but that's their day job, while they have children on their backs or in the fields with them, while they're taking animals there to graze with them, and then they have a night job and a morning job before they start their day job. If we can find other ways to facilitate their time, to save some of their time, then that's an important next step. There has been talk at this conference about mechanization, and mechanization, of course, by improving production is critically important. But in that process, we have to be sure that we're inclusive of women so that they continue to be, so that they're able to use these new systems. And so as something becomes more mechanized, it doesn't also become more male, leaving more labor in the fields to the women.
Stay with the Africa Leadership Dialogues.
John Mutunga, the CEO of Kenya National Farmers Federation. Now, when it comes to investment in agricultural product value chains and brought about by our government's foreign direct investment, or even whether it is foreign or internal, that is where we have clear cases of inclusion. And it's not surprising that we are dealing with a discussion without data. Probably if I challenge the panelists to tell us what proportions of inclusions are we talking about, I don't think they would. So the problem we have is that investors are allowed to invest and they concentrate the chain. That issue has not come out as yet. Our constitution of this chain means exclusion of the people. These people are ours and we have them. Unfortunately, Africa connects very well. Africa is competing among different countries, but Africa is not collaborating sufficiently. If conditions are made difficult in one country, they jump to another country. So we are not sufficiently guarding our boundaries in terms of exclusion. So what should we do then? My proposal is that this issue needs to be discussed at AU level, and you have harmonized policies of guarding investment to ensure inclusion other than promote exclusion.
There is a need for some sort of transformation of education in Africa that we should not mind cited on the question of colonial education type. If we see that agriculture is very important for development and for reduction of poverty, then the curriculum, the whole system of schooling from the nursery up to university should be changed into inclusiveness of agro-business, entrepreneurship and technology, from the primary school up to university. But the way we are putting the system of education, if it is an investment of education, we are more on the question of that a student should be a graduate, having a degree, master's, PhD, but not really preparing the youth for independent self-employment. We should design in the sense that education should be really prepare a youth for self-employment.
On the nutrition issue and the importance of better nutrition as we also grow more food, a couple of points. One is that, yes, we do have to increase production. The population will increase 100%, but production has to increase even more than that, not only to feed people at the current status quo, but to reach those who are totally undernourished now, and to be able to support the needs of people as they become better off, because much of the new production is going to be necessary for people who have more income, who therefore want to have a more diverse diet, which hopefully is better for all. But in that context, I think it's wonderful that the GrainPro CEO raised the importance of storage, something that needs a lot of attention in many places throughout the continent. One interesting support for storage, among many other things, is the World Food Programme's project created in fact by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, called Purchase for Progress, where they are working with smallholder farmers, particularly in collective groups, to be able to help farmers understand what kind of product WFP might buy, but part of that includes the protection of that product and the storage of that product.
Wanjiru.
I just want to make a few quick points about, there was a question about education, which I think is absolutely critical. It is going to be absolutely imperative that we transform the nature and the state of education across the continent if we're to meet not just the food production needs of the continent, but also the industrialization and all the other challenges that we're meeting. Just to, I think, to agree that there is a way that a lot of our current education systems were built to address a previous colonial need, and maybe as Africans we need to ask deep questions about what does Africa need moving forward, and how do we invest in this massive youth bulge in a way that makes sure that we're deploying and leveraging the youth population towards Africa's prosperity. There was also a question about statistics and inclusion, and I would just beg to very respectfully disagree that we don't have statistics on inclusion and exclusion. In the particular sector that I'm in, working with Awad, I can tell you that the most recent data we have indicates that across Africa, when it comes to agricultural research scientists, and here we know that African scientists, African innovation, African solutions are going to be critical for the challenges that we're facing as a continent. We know that only 1 in 4 African agricultural research scientists is a woman. 1 in 4. And the numbers get much worse when it gets to leadership. Who's actually making decisions on which research agendas get pushed forward? And here we're looking at, if you have a room of 7 scientists, 7 leaders in the agricultural ecosystem in Africa who are making decisions, only 1 of those people is going to be a woman. If we're sitting in a room and trying to decide what bean variety are we going to proceed and put research resources into, it's going to make a big difference to make sure that the people in that room, the 7 people sitting around that table, are a lot more diverse than only 1 woman.
My vision for Africa is not 2 billion people struggling to feed themselves hand to mouth. My vision for Africa is 2 billion people in a vibrant African economy that's making a strong contribution in the world's economy. And to do that, mechanization plays a very significant role. To answer the questions AGCO offers for very small farmers, we've developed a hand planter. AGCO has small tractors and small implements that are very good for smaller farmers or for a group of farmers in a farm organization. Mechanization is what drives the yield on the property, on the farm, from 1 ton per hectare to 3 and 4 and 5 and 7 tons. And that's what increases the income of the family, which enables members of the family to get off of the farm, to go get educated in school, and to join other parts of the value chain, up and down the value chain, creating wealth for the economy. AGCO has been operating in Africa for over 50 years and is present in over 37 African countries with a dealer network that sells and services and maintains and teaches farmers how to use our equipment. We have invested in the African continent and the African people. We have put a model farm near the airport in Lusaka where we are demonstrating modern farming techniques, and we're training operators how to operate the equipment, training mechanics how to maintain the equipment. And we should be opening this in May of next year, and we'll be demonstrating everything from the hand planter all the way up to controlled traffic farming using very high technology. AGCO is very committed to the African market. Africa is the key growth market for AGCO. And mechanization is the key towards developing and transforming a prosperous Africa. I believe that we've not talked about mechanization enough at the conference. A transformed Africa, a food-secure Africa, an Africa that does not need to import food to feed its families and its children. A prosperous Africa and an inclusive Africa is a mechanized Africa. There are necessary ingredients. We know that we're doubling the population in Africa in the years to come, and we know we don't have enough food today. That means we need to more than double the food production in Africa. We're not going to meet our objectives if we're moving the needle by 20%, 30%. We need to more than double the food production. There are necessary ingredients. We need robust seeds. We need good technology in the seeds to be drought resistant. We need very good fertilizer. We need chemicals to protect the crops. But the transformational ingredient is mechanization. Mechanization allows us to more than double the food production. AGCO is committed to a very inclusive mechanization in Africa. We want to take every farmer with us. We want to take smallholder farmers on a path to prosperity. The same for emerging farmers, and we want to supply large commercial farmers. There is a business model for smallholder farmers to benefit from mechanization. That's called the farm organization. 50 families can invest together and buy a basic kit of mechanization. And in a 3 to 5 year time frame, they are transforming themselves from being on the treadmill of poverty to getting onto a path of prosperity together. Agriculture, as we know, is driven by the woman in Africa. Agriculture needs to include the youth in Africa. Mechanization is an outstanding way to do that. We are teaching women how to operate farm machinery on our model farm in Zambia.
Yassin, your thoughts, please.
Recognize the enabling environment created by the Ethiopian government for the Enet Bank to be created, which is a bank that has been established to contribute to women's economic empowerment and inclusive financial services. It was launched in 2011 and had 7,000 individual shareholders, with 64% of the equity held by women. Enet Bank is really now developing products and strategies that will make credit and financing more accessible to women. Only 3 years, the bank has raised its full required capital of 75 million Ethiopian birr. I think this is an example of really that institutions can also follow in terms of how you can make finance accessible to women. The other issue I think is really important is really processing. I think we didn't talk a lot about food processing. And this is, of course, we know that in some countries, 90% of the food is processed by women. And it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of time. When you talk about mechanization, I think someone has talked about it, but really making technology accessible for women in terms of processing. And I think that will also help a lot in terms of management of waste and post-harvest waste.
In principle, financial institutions should provide access to finance on objective terms, open to all. So that would in principle suggest that we would not take affirmative action so much, but that we would ban any bias in credit delivery. Now, I can understand that in situations, and that's in many countries the case, where actually that bias has been the case in the past, that affirmative action is taken. But I would suggest that that would then be done in dedicated programs. Because the basic credit delivery mechanism of a bank, of course, has to have these as much as possible objective criteria embedded in it. Also, programs, dedicated programs that focus specifically, for instance, on women or on young entrepreneurs, would still, of course, embody conditions for credit delivery. That also needs to be clear. The issue we face in access to finance related to specific groups within the population is not just an issue for banks. If the local culture is such that women simply do not come to banks, that is also a cultural and a society issue. If land titles can only be held by men, then something in the legislation will have to change. So we have to confront this both in the financial sector, but also in society and in governments. It has to be a collective action.
I want to say thank you very much to our panelists. Let's give them a round of applause, please.
Stay with the Africa Leadership Dialogues.
Great insights, and we hope farmers and non-farmers as well across the continent are gaining from these powerful perspectives that are being shared about agriculture and agribusiness on the continent. Let's get to your views on the issues.
This week we asked you, how can African governments encourage the private sector to invest in agriculture? John Doug says, by showing interest in the agriculture sector and building trust with the available investors. Obwoge Magara says, by highly involving private sector in various global agri-forums and cutting tax on agriculture expenditure.
Hello everyone, my name is Kinyanjui. I'm watching ALD from Nairobi. I think African governments can support the private sector in investing in agriculture by first of all providing infrastructure, secondly creating policies that will actually enable the growth of the industry, and ultimately creating demand for the solutions and the products by opening up markets and selling the country to the outside world.
To join our conversation, go to our G+ page, Africa Leadership Dialogues. On Facebook, Africa Leadership Dialogues. On Twitter, @AfricaLD. And on WhatsApp, send your video comments to +254 715 816 033.
And now to Africa's top 10.
On Africa's Top 10 this week, we feature countries on venture capital availability. This research looks into how easy it is for entrepreneurs with innovative but risky projects to find venture capital. It is ranked out of a possible 7, with 7 being extremely easy and 1 being extremely difficult. Starting us off at number 10 is Botswana. It is ranked at number 67 globally with an index of 2.75. Coming in at number 9 is Seychelles. The island nation registered an index of 2.78 and is ranked at number 62 globally. Taking the number 8 spot is Côte d'Ivoire with an index of 2.8 and is ranked globally at number 55. Positioned at number 7 is Senegal. The West African country is ranked 53rd globally with an index of 2.9. At number 6 is Morocco with an index of 2.98 and a global ranking at number 49. Kenya takes the 5th spot. The East African country registered an index of 3.1 and is ranked at number 43 globally. Mauritius comes in at number 4. The island nation takes position 41 on the global chart with an index of 3.1. Slotted at number 3 is Rwanda with an index of 3.1. It is ranked at number 39 globally. Coming in at number 2 is South Africa, which recorded an index of 3.2 and is ranked at number 32 globally. And at number 1 this week is Ghana. The West African state is ranked 36th globally with an index of 3.2. And that's Africa's Top 10 this week.
Time to end the show now. As always, here's a powerful African proverb. Sow seeds in your garden. Wait and see what comes with the rain. Let's sow seeds of positivity, growth, and prosperity for the future. Blessings to you and blessings to Africa.